Welcome to This Explainer. Today we are breaking down one of those desserts that, let's be honest, feels a little intimidating: the restaurant quality chocolate lava cake. For years, people have ordered this at high-end restaurants, assuming it requires some sort of, I don't know, culinary magic to get that perfect liquid center surrounded by a delicate, spongy crumb. But today we're actually going to look at the science, the exact techniques, and the focused chocolate lava recipes that prove this indulgent treat is absolutely achievable right in your very own kitchen. I mean, just look at that. Hooked yet? That mouth-watering visual right there is exactly what we're after. Notice the molten, decadent, dark chocolate just flowing from the crusty, well-baked outer edge. It's this irresistible contrast of textures and temperatures, but how exactly do we get that liquid gold to pour out perfectly the moment we break it open with a spoon, without the whole thing just collapsing into a total puddle? So, that brings us to our main question for today. What is the true secret behind that perfect molten center? Is it just an undercooked batter? Maybe a hidden truffle? Is it all about oven temperature, or does it really come down to the chemistry of the ingredients? To master the perfect chocolate lava recipe, we've got to uncover the specific science, technique, and timing that makes the whole thing work. Section 1: Anatomy of a lava cake. Two distinct methods. Okay, let's dive right into this because there is actually more than one way to achieve that molten magic. A lot of bakers assume all lava cakes are created equal, but looking at our sources, here's how the two distinct structural approaches really compare. On the left, we've got the pudding cake method. This is the traditional approach where the cake is simply a highly enriched batter, and the lava itself is actually just precisely underbaked cake batter. The outside cooks and sets up, while the inside stays hot and liquid. On the right, though, we have the chocolate center method. In this version, you literally embed a physical piece of chocolate or even a frozen ganache core straight into the middle of the raw batter. As the cake bakes fully, that center melts. This second method is frankly a bit more foolproof, since your bake times aren't quite as terrifyingly critical. Section 2: The classic molten formula. Let's look at that first method through the lens of traditional greats like Jean-Georges Vongerichten, who popularized the dish back in the 80s, and Gordon Ramsay. The absolutely crucial point here is the ratio of ingredients. A classic lava cake uses a super high proportion of unsalted butter and high-quality 60 to 70% dark chocolate. It relies heavily on whole eggs, plus extra egg yolks for its rich structure, combined with sugar and a surprisingly minimal amount of flour. We're talking sometimes just a couple of tablespoons for an entire batch. But here is a seriously fascinating pro tip we pulled from a popular YouTube creator's recipe: adding a tiny 1/16 of a teaspoon of nutmeg. It acts as this completely undetectable background spice, but it gives an amazing depth and a real oomph to the dark chocolate. Section 3: Adapting for alternative diets, vegan and gluten-free. Now, you might think removing eggs or flour from a recipe that relies almost entirely on them would spell disaster for a lava cake, right? But actually, this classic formula can be brilliantly adapted for various dietary needs without losing any of that decadent, gooey texture. First up, the vegan approach. Because vegan cakes completely lack the structural binding that eggs provide, you can't just underbake the batter. It would literally just be a messy liquid. So instead, the vegan trick uses our second method: a frozen coconut cream and dark chocolate ganache core. This core sits in the freezer for about 20 to 30 minutes before being dropped into the batter. Plus, to avoid a gummy texture, the recipe explicitly calls for Dutch processed cocoa powder. Natural cocoa is acidic, but Dutch processed has a neutralized pH of 7 to 8, which interacts perfectly with vegan buttermilk to build a moist, fudgy structural crumb right around that melting ganache. For all the gluten-free bakers out there, the trick is totally in the flour substitution. Since a classic recipe uses very little flour anyway, it's actually a perfect candidate for going gluten-free. But you really don't want a heavy crumb. The perfect substitution, derived from our sources, is a very exact combination: 1 tablespoon of almond flour and a half teaspoon of coconut flour per serving. This specific ratio perfectly mimics the light, tender cake crumb of traditional wheat flour without weighing down the whole fragile structure. Section 4: Prepping the perfect pan. Okay, so now that we've got the chemistry of our batters down, we need to talk hardware. You can have the best batter in the world, but if it sticks to the dish, you don't have a lava cake, you've got a chocolate scramble. Prep is absolutely key to ensuring the cake releases cleanly. You're going to want to use a ramekin or a Dario mold. Step 1: take softened, room temperature butter and wipe it generously into the ramekins. Make sure every single crevice is coated. Step 2: coat the inside completely. Some chefs swear by granulated sugar for a slightly crisp edge, while others prefer cocoa powder or flour. Finally, and do not skip this, tap the ramekin upside down to shake out the excess. You want a thin, uniform, nonstick barrier here, not big dry clumps of flour or sugar. Section 5. The crucial bake time. All right, this brings us to the most suspenseful part of the entire process, the bake. Timing and temperature are quite literally the only things standing between a perfect, oozing lava cake and a standard, kind of dense chocolate muffin. Notice right here how wildly these temperatures and times vary. It all depends on the structural formula of your batter. Look at the gluten-free version, a scorching 450 degrees Fahrenheit for a mere 4 to 5 minutes. It needs that intense heat to quickly set the almond flour walls before the center overcooks. Then look at the vegan version. Because it lacks eggs and relies on that frozen ganache core, it requires a much longer, gentler bake, 375 degrees for 17 to 19 minutes. Gordon Ramsay hits the middle ground at 9 minutes. The big takeaway here, you absolutely must follow the precise timing for the specific structural chemistry of the recipe you choose. But hey, we all know ovens lie and temperatures constantly fluctuate, so how do you truly know it's ready? Well, a baker's guide gives us this incredibly helpful, universal visual tell for doneness. The edges of the cakes become firm while the center is jiggly. The tops should look pretty matte, not like shiny wet batter. If you want to play it extra safe, stick a toothpick exactly a ½ inch from the outer edge. If it comes out clean but the dead center still jiggles when you gently shake the pan, pull it out of the oven right away. Section 6. The final flip. So, the cakes are finally out of the oven. Now comes the real climax of the bake. That moment of truth where you have to extract this incredibly fragile molten dessert from a blisteringly hot pan without bursting it open prematurely. Our bakery sources provided a highly specific and honestly brilliant, slick trick for this. First things first, don't touch them right out of the oven. Let them cool and set up in the pan for 3 to 5 minutes. Next, run a knife very gently around the edge. Then, place a cutting board or a serving plate flat over the top of the tin and invert the whole thing. Finally, and this is the pro move, hold the upside-down tin and board about 6 to 8 inches above the counter and drop it abruptly. Bam! That sudden shock breaks the vacuum seal, practically guaranteeing a perfect release. And just look at the reward for all that careful science and precision. Seeing those beautiful, plated results makes it all worth it. The cake stands tall, it perfectly holds its own weight, but the very moment you break the seal with a spoon, that rich, thick lava pours out flawlessly onto the plate. It's a total visual and textural triumph. To finish the whole thing off, you really don't want to overcomplicate the plating. The dark chocolate is intensely rich, so the best garnishes are the ones that provide a bit of contrast. A simple, elegant dusting of powdered sugar over the top is classic. A generous scoop of cold vanilla ice cream melting right against the hot cake is incredible. Or just a handful of fresh raspberries and strawberries, their bright acidity perfectly cuts through those heavy, decadent chocolate flavors. So there you have it. We've demystified the science, we've broken down the structural differences, and we've totally unlocked the precise baking times. The perfect chocolate lava cake is no longer just restaurant territory. It is entirely within your grasp. So I'll leave you with this. Which chocolate lava recipe are you going to master for your next date night or dinner party? Will it be the rich classic, the clever vegan, or that rapid-fire gluten-free version? Head to the kitchen, test your technique, and prepare to absolutely blow your guests away. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and happy baking.